He said, where have you been, Emil? Well, I've been here. I've been around, but I've come back. I was on the East Coast, as you know, doing this thing at the New York City Fringe Festival. But now I'm back, and I'm happy to be back. You found us. This is the Secret Podcast. That's what I call it. I mean, other people say they have the Secret Podcast, but people know them. You can find them. It's hard to find us. And we just literally, we pop up. We're a pop up. And we're popping up now. Emil, Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. My guest, Daniel Phil Gonzalez, coming up shortly, or longly, depends. We'll probably talk a moderate amount of time about the news of the day. And there's a considerable amount of news. We'll talk about the Trump thing. We'll talk about the student protests at all the universities throughout, well, not all, but at major universities around the country, because Dan has a perspective there. But I want to begin this part of the program. Traditionally, if you've listened to all 670 of these, you know the beginnings of the shows I call my lagniappe, a little something extra. If we're on before 2 o'clock, and we're on before 2 o'clock, so this is the lagniappe, the little something extra. My homage to the Louisianan Filipinos, the Pierre Lafitte Filipinos that I encountered at one point in my life in the 80s. But I want to talk about something coming up this Saturday. That's why it's important. You know, I've talked about the Shine Challenge 2024, a new play by Ishmael Reed. And you know that I have a small part in it. And in that small part, I wear a small fake mustache. And I am the owner of the Titanic in this play, the Shine Challenge. Well, the Shine Challenge, which was a video production, a video reading of the play, that was really sponsored by the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. And, you know, we had a premiere a couple months ago. Well, the play now has its West Coast video premiere, and it's going to be at the Oakland African American Museum and Library this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. And you say, well, how do we get well, it's at 659 14th Street. And they're asking you to RSVP. I mean, that kind of service. So call 510, an old-time Oaklander saying 510. 510-637-0200. 510-637-0200. Call the African American Museum and Library of Oakland. They're at 659 14th Street, and say you want to go to the Saturday West Coast video premiere of the Shine Challenge 2024. Starts at 2:30, goes to 4:30 p.m. I suppose they'll be projecting it on the screen there or something. And then afterwards, the beauty about this West Coast premiere is that Ishmael Reed, the author, the novelist, playwright, award-winning writer, Ishmael Reed from Oakland, will be there. Also, director Carla Blank will be there. And I, as one of the actors of the production, will be there to lead a discussion about the significance of the Shine Challenge, or why the Shine Challenge is an important part of not just African American lore, but US lore. Because here's the thing about the Shine Challenge. Shine is a character who is said to have survived the Titanic, and he goes on trial. Ishmael portrays a trial in this fictionalized version, I guess you could say. It's fiction. But the whole thing is fiction in the sense that the Shine stories were oral traditions handed down, or oral stories, oral storytelling passed down through the years in the African American community. They were called toasts, and they had the impact of taking on a story about this fellow Shine, how he was one of the few or the only African American on the Titanic, and he survived. And how did he survive? And why was he there in the first place? These are stories that African Americans told themselves after the Titanic went down. And it was kind of an interesting thing, because back then, in the year of the Titanic was seen as white supremacy itself. And some people lauded the sinking of the Titanic. Some people said that the character Shine was created to show that the African American could survive white supremacy, could survive the sinking of the Titanic. So it's interesting how the story evolves and how it's almost like a comic tale, but there's some seriousness too. It's a kind of satire. And the history of it is that Langston Hughes heard these toasts being spread throughout the African American community. He heard it in Harlem in the 1930s. He captured a few lines of it in a book, and it's been passed down. Others have passed it down through the oral tradition. There's some African American comics have passed it down in video form. Ishmael Reed has taken the story and has embellished. Well, embellish is not the term. He's put it in a courtroom drama form so that you see the issue of Shine, his innocence, his existence, as being litigated before your eyes. It's kind of an interesting, informal, and why is it a challenge? It's a challenge because the story goes on. Now you hear the story of Shine. Now you tell the story again. Oral tradition. That's how it works. Anyway, if you have some questions of Ishmael first of all, go see the video premiere. It's a video reading of the play. Wearing costumes. I wear my fake mustache, so I'm not totally uncostumed. And so if you go, I believe if you call up the African American Museum and Library of Oakland, 659 14th Street, and ask about it, I think you have to RSVP, because I didn't see anything about prices. But if you call 510-637-0200, 637-0200, area code 510, then get set, 2:30 in the afternoon, 1 hour of the play, and then about an hour and 10 of the play, and then about 40 minutes of discussion where Ishmael will explain. Will answer your questions, and Carla will answer your questions about Shine, the Shine Challenge, the purpose of the play today in 2024. And I'm there as an actor who appeared in the play, and I can tell you what it's like to wear a fake mustache just like this. Quite simple, actually. Not very difficult. But I did wear it. So all that's happening tomorrow, Saturday, in Oakland at the African American Museum and Library in Oakland. Do try to make it. They're asking everyone to RSVP at 510-637-0200. So you got to be in Oakland, the Bay Area, the immediate Bay Area, and try to make it. They're at 659 14th Street. I'll be there. Sans mustache. That's so that, I don't get mobbed. Because, these people see the mustache and they say, oh my God, is that the guy who owns the Titanic, or is that Omar Sharif? They don't know. Anyway, check it out. It was a pleasure to be part of the Shine Challenge. And It's a shame that we couldn't mount it live somewhere, but the Nuyorican Poets Cafe did a video version that we premiered a couple months ago. And now the West Coast video premiere happens this Saturday, 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. That's at Oakland's African American Museum and Library, and they're at 659 14th Street in Oakland. Call 510-637-0200 to RSVP. They're asking. And like I said, an hour of the video, and then you get to ask Ishmael Reed, Carla Blank, and myself any questions. There'll be a discussion that will lead at the museum. Should be over by 4:30 p.m. And then we can say a fun time was had by all. So that's the Shine Challenge 2024. Don't miss it. It's Saturday, tomorrow. I don't know when you're going to watch this replay, but on the 27th, Saturday, 2:30 p.m., once again, call 510-637-0200 to RSVP at the Oakland African American Museum and Library, 659 14th Street. Don't miss out. I miss my swish sounds. I miss my swish sounds. I miss being in my I did call it the COVID closet. Now it's just the closet studio of Emil Amok's Takeout. It's been a while. It's been a couple weeks that I was in New York. I tried to do a few shows intermittently before or during performances. I was gone 3 weeks. I only had 5 performances, but they were all good, all different, of Emil Amok, lost NPR host, wily Filipino vegan trans dad. And that's a show that I'm going to take to Orlando. We did well in New York. We won the Spirit of the Festival Award, named for a woman, Jill Mirch, who was instrumental and exemplified the spirit of the Fringe, the late Jill Mirch. And I was really pleased. At first, my friends, they call themselves friends. They said, Emil, that's sort of like winning the Miss Congeniality Award, isn't it? No. It's not Miss or Mr. Congeniality. I have the mustache. I have Mr. Congeniality. And now, no longer have the mustache. Oh, the mustache looks better on you, Emil. Oh, no. The mustache isn't authentic. So, apparently, a friend of mine who knows the Fringe and how these things work says, Emil, don't you see this is the best award possible? You won a great show. It was better than any one category, best drama, best solo performance, best comedy, best stand-up, better than any of that. It was saying you brought a great show, you brought it to New York, and besides that, you were a good person who exemplified the Fringe. You were a fringy fringer. You're the person of the Fringe was created for, someone who you're not going to see on Broadway, to my chagrin. No. I mean, that's really it. I mean, the Fringe is there to get voices out to the people who would not ordinarily have a way to get out to the public. That's the spirit of the Fringe. The Fringe isn't just all these people on the edge of human awareness, of mainstream taste. It's not that at all. It's people with voices who would be marginalized because of their voices. I want to be with them. I want to be with those guys. I don't want to be this is the vanilla highway of theatrics. I want to be on this is something you're not going to see on the mainstream. And, that's been the way I've lived my life all this time. Come on. I mean, really. And so the spirit of the Fringe, I when my friend explained it to me that way, I've always totally embraced it. I've always totally, when I was given it last Sunday, but I didn't quite understand it until my friend within the hour said, look, Emil, snap out of it. This is not Miss Congeniality. This is an award that you should be proud of. And I am. I mean, I've never won an award on the Fringe circuit. And I've been on the Fringe circuit now since 2016. So that's 8 years, but 2 years or 3 years was in COVID. And I really think 2017 was the first Fringe in San Diego. So I had a great time at the New York City Fringe. When I go to the New York City Fringe, I live like a New Yorker. And so, I'm really odd now when I come back to my quiet little California town and I have to start making siren sounds. So I feel at home like I'm in the East Village. Very different, very different. I fly in to California, the air, we're on the coast. It's not like the East River. We got the Pacific Ocean. It's very different. So immediately I was like, I've been away too long because I think I've gotten used to the fact that the East River is a body of water. But it's not my body of water. The Pacific is my body of water, right? I mean, I'm from California. I still love New York, teeming with life at all hours. And then I realized it's just like walking down the Mission District in San Francisco, where I grew up. I mean, what's a big deal? And then I realized that having lived in the suburbs all these years, I don't go to the Mission District that often. And yet I found the Village, the East Village in New York, with all its life, it just seems safer. Is that me? Is that just me? Compared to the last time I was walking around San Francisco. So anyway, I'm not quite a New Yorker, but I like to visit it a lot more. And you like to visit it a lot more when you go to New York and you don't go to one museum. I didn't go to one museum. I mean, I just spent time in the neighborhood, walking around, doing my life, and then doing my shows, and then seeing the New York audience. New York audience was great. We did 5 shows of Emil Amok, Lost NPR host. Got a great, I call it it's a positive review. It didn't say I was the greatest thing since sliced bread, but it was very positive, and it got the play. It got what I was trying to do. And if you go to my Facebook page at Emil Guillermo or Emil Guillermo Media, it's from, you'll see the reviews there. And it was very gratifying. It came out, of course, with 1 day left on the show, so it didn't really help me in terms of ticket sales, but that's all right. It got the word out, and it was good. I don't have the... let's see. Well, I could just go to it, right? I mean... And I will go to it. Let's see. Let's go to... I'll find it here. It's from Thinking Theater, NYC. And it was really interesting because... I'll just read the top part. All right. Emil Amok, Lost NPR host, wily Filipino vegan trans dad. Written and performed by Emil Amok Guillermo. Here's the paragraph I'll read. Weaving together biography with the 20th century history of American colonialism in the Philippines, Emil Amok, Lost NPR host, wily Filipino vegan trans dad, is part stand-up comedy, part pathos-infused monologue. In the production, Emil tells the story of his father's immigration to the United States and subsequent exclusion from American society, as well as his own life as a white-sounding first-generation American whose seeming successes in graduating from Harvard and in broadcast journalism are belied by more subtle but nonetheless very present racism and discrimination. Wow. When I read that, I said, now this person gets it. As an artist, I show X, I show the story, But who knows what people come away with, right? And that reviewer for thinkingtheater.nyc got it. Stephanie Petros. Stephanie Petros, who's a professor in the area. So I thank her for the nice review. I mean, it's not the kind of review that says, "Stop the presses, he's great, he's hot, he's magnificent." It's not one of those. But it's a really a subtle, nuanced review that talks about what she felt when she came to see the show. And I hope you get a chance to see the show too. If you email me and say, "You got to bring it to San Francisco," because it's different from the show I did last year at the SF Fringe. A little different, yeah. But if you email me, I'll try to find a venue and do it here somewhere. Maybe September, maybe October, maybe birthday week. I don't know. Maybe for Filipino American Heritage Month, or History Month, rather. And then I'm definitely doing it in Orlando. So if you happen to be in Orlando, Florida, for whatever, the Orlando Fringe Festival is a big deal. May 14th through May 27th, I'll be there. I've got 7 shows there. So if you happen to go to Disney World because, you want to see East Coast Disney, or you're on the East Coast anyway, catch Emil Amok, Lost NPR host, at the Orlando Fringe Festival. And at all my different sites, I'll put up ticket information, how you get your tickets. All right, so I love New York. I love the people there. Thank you to all the Fringe Festival folks. Thank you to all the New Yorkers who came to see my show, people in the area. Thank you to all the people who saw the show live stream, because it was available live stream. Thank you. Thank you for seeing it. It was a nice run, good run. We had a good review, and it was, I do this. This is what I do. I do that. I don't do it instead of journal. I also do some journalism. I write my columns still about being live and on stage, that I love. I love that. I love that. All right. So now, and see, here's one thing. When you're in your studio, you can do this. You can swish. And then we bring up my dear friend who has, we haven't done a show in a while, and we usually do shows every Friday. Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, Professor Emeritus, San Francisco State University, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State. They were the cradle of ethnic studies in America. Hey, Dan, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on again. It's great to have you back.
Yeah, well, it's great to see you. And, I tried to do the show a couple times when I was in New York, but my setup was always a little more complicated than my studio closet, so it wasn't as easy. But I'm glad you're here. Now, before we begin, I hope that you'll get the chance to see the new version of Emil Amok, Lost NPR host, at some point. But now, you saw the musical Larry.
Yes.
And in San Francisco, I don't know what the future is for Larry, but I guess they just keep going to bigger venues. They were at the Bravo Theater in San Francisco. That's about, 800 people or so, or
Well, I don't know if it's that big,
maybe
but
300 to 500. Yeah, but
yeah,
they had good crowds. And what did you?
yeah, it was packed every time that I checked. The seating availability, and you had to, if you really wanted to get in, you had to order your seats at least a week in advance.
Wow, that's good. So they had 3-week run, very successful. What's the scuttlebutt? Are they going to take it somewhere?
I
Public?
don't know yet. I haven't spoken to Gail.
From
I'm
Santa?
going to let everybody. Gail Romasanta. I haven't let. I want to let everybody rest because they really put a lot into this project. And
Hey, no resting. Come on, there's like 8
eh,
men. eight performances a week.
You
Come
know, I
on.
don't know how many of the cast have straight jobs, but the probability is very high that many members of the cast have straight jobs because you got to be able to live.
Yeah.
But what was impressive, above all, I think, was the music. It was really well done,
Yeah.
and the singers were just outstanding.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
and
I
it,
heard that. I heard that about the person who put together the music, and I'm happy for Gail Romasanta, who co-wrote the book with Don Mabalan, our friend, and I'm glad they had a good run. I just hope they continue to grow and continue to seek bigger venues and continue to bring this to a wider audience because it's a story that 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 people need to know about. And here's the funny thing: people love musicals for some reason. I'm not a big
yeah,
musical fan, but people love
why not,
music.
man? Jeez, you don't
I
like Busby Berkeley, old blood Busby Berkeley,
No, I mean
choreography? What's
they're all
wrong with
right.
you?
I like people talking to each other. I not necessarily singing to each other. Although I saw Godspell on Easter Sunday, and Godspell the movie,
Right,
and
right.
and I didn't see it on stage, but that was pretty interesting. But as a movie, I saw it to prepare myself to go to New York, and it captured everything about summer New York: gray, smoggy, kind of oppressive, and so I got
Sweaty,
that at
sweaty,
Godspell.
sticky,
Yeah.
sweaty, sticky.
So all right, so you like Larry Itliong, and the Larry Itliong story. People got the story. They got the story, and they were entertained.
Yeah, and the relationship between Don and Larry develops towards the conclusion.
There's a
Uh,
relationship between Don and Larry in
yeah,
the.
yeah,
Oh,
and
that's
I'll
new.
I'll leave that out there as a teaser. But there's a
The
relationship
author,
between the two of them.
the author and Larry. Well, I
The
have
historian and Larry. Yeah,
sorry, the historian. I have a relationship with Larry, even though I didn't know him, but I feel like I did because he's out of my dad's generation, same group
right,
of
right.
people from the WOG, and I feel a connection. So whenever I think of my dad, I think of Larry, and sometimes I wish my dad were Larry sometimes, because then he would have been a real activist. But he was a union guy. My dad was a union cook, local too, San Francisco. Anyway, all right. So we'll come back, and maybe Larry will come back, and I'll be in the same town as Larry sometime and see it. So we'll swish it out.
Yeah, it certainly deserves to make more runs in the Bay Area, but in all probability, it'll get visited to other cities,
Yeah, I
and
think.
on the West Coast particularly. And I
Yeah,
think Seattle would probably be a good guess.
yeah. This is one of the things where you take the production one city at a time, and you tour with it as your cast allows. But all right, so Larry Itliong, Larry the musical. Let's go to the news, because so much in the news. I happened to be in New York when all this stuff was breaking.
Yeah, that's right.
The
I
first
was
trial.
thinking about you all the time when all this stuff was breaking loose.
Yeah, I was thinking. But it's so hard to get around in New York, and where you are, makes a big difference with, the ease in which you can get around. So I didn't have a pass to get inside the courtroom, but I could have hung out outside to see how few demonstrators there were who were pro-Trump, which very few pro-Trumpers.
Yeah,
I mean,
today they showed zero. I mean,
yeah,
there was nobody out there.
yeah, it's like between 0 and 3, and I guess that means that Trump supporters kind of get him. They understand that he's a con, and they're not going to go out there and put it on the line for him, which I guess is really what he deserves. But to him, it must be really sorely disappointing that people don't go out there. And Oh,
Yeah, we're all. Yeah, we froze.
yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. So it must be sorely disappointing, huh?
For him, I think every microsecond that there isn't someone kneeling in adoration of him
Mhm.
is time in purgatory, if not hell.
Yeah. So far, we had the jury selection, which could have been the showstopper and could have taken weeks because sometimes jury selection takes weeks, but they got that done in time. And now we've got David Pecker kind of hogging the mic pretty much.
Well, he's
As
done now.
Yeah,
They've
he's
had
done.
they've had not only was there cross examination, which only took one day. They've had witnesses 2 and 3 up. So the question is, who's next, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Pecker was the star, and he pretty much laid out the case, which said there was this catch and release policy in the checkbook journalism ways of the National Enquirer, which people should know isn't the way it's done in journalism, but that's the way they did it. Uh, do you think it was enough? I mean, it shows that there was a way, and when Pecker pretty much admitted that they were really trying to impact the campaign, I think that's kind of pretty clear. And yet, there's a number of observers who look at the trial, and we're all looking at this trial secondhand through reporters who get access from people on the inside. But some people are saying there's not enough there to make what went on a felony. That we just have this business documentation case, and it's not an election interference case yet. What do you think? How do you think it's going for the prosecution versus the defense and vice versa?
I think they have to build the case exactly the way they are. Pecker is probably the good way to open up because he knows so much, particularly about the transactions involving Stormy Daniels, and his lack of participation in that process. He was involved in the McDougal thing, but not in the Stormy Daniels thing, and he's linked to everything down the line. And also Trump. It's really interesting, right?
Mm,
Trump's reaction when he was asked, what do you think of Mr. Pecker? He said he's a nice guy.
yeah,
And everybody's musing about, well, he cuts everybody else down, you know, and now we have the first witness up, and he has been trying to destroy in advance, of course, Michael Cohen. We don't know how he's going to deal with some of the women if McDougal and obviously Stormy Daniels are called up. The prosecution is using the fact that Trump has broken the gag order. Okay, so many times we're starting to lose count. I think we're up to 14 or 15 times now,
yeah. And
and
he could get 30 days in jail for each one.
yeah, but there have been a lot of people commenting on that possibility, and yes, I've been asked, can't what do you do about that? And I said, well, the standard practice would be to hold him in contempt and throw him in the clink until he decides he's going to behave. And I said, but then he can't do that, and it's because it would make a martyr out of Trump. He in part, I think he's doing what he's doing because he wants to provoke the judge into throwing him into the clink and
Oh yeah,
making him a martyr.
right.
The least that would happen is he would very happily be getting more money, more donations to his campaign. Uh, However, I think if he was not only held in a local holding cell, right,
Mm.
at the same building, if instead he was transferred to Riker. Yeah,
Oh, Rikers Island, yeah. That would well, then he can appeal directly to blackmail voters. And say, look, here I'm with you. I'm here. I'm with you, brothers. Because there's a lot of people I hear a lot in the black community. Oh, Donald Trump's going to win because Biden doesn't have a chance. There's a lot of people saying that, and a lot of it's a lot of it's from young blacks, but if they see Donald Trump in Rikers, that could change their mind. Yeah, Donald Trump. Yeah.
So why do you think so many black, especially younger black males, are thinking Biden's a loser?
I think they're just tired. I think number one, they're tired. Number two, they're not looking at it really they're not looking at it in a practical way, right? They're not looking. They're looking at it as a what if either candidate what has either candidate done for them, and so they say nothing. They're not interested. They get more. They disenfranchise themselves. That's what I don't like. And if they had a different view and they just looked at both candidates and said, well, Trump is bad or Biden's bad, but Trump is worse. And then, the best way to get out of this is to back Biden and then work and be active to make things better. But a lot of people are getting frustrated. And I think they're saying things like, yeah, Trump's going to win or Biden doesn't have a chance because out of frustration. And also they think that if they say it loud enough, people will start caring about them because it's true. When the mainstream pundits hear that, oh, blacks and Hispanic young people are really turned off, it gets the candidate's ear to address some of their issues, I think. And so maybe it's calculated in a not so, calculated way. Maybe its impact is to make people pay attention to them more, which is what they want. But I heard something the other day where some African Americans were saying, yeah, Biden's going to lose, Trump's going to win. We'll just deal with it. And which is sad to me because it's not a foregone conclusion that Trump's going to win. Although you see the polls that show that among his base, a lot of people are sticking with Trump no matter what. But there is a large number of people who are more alienated that they voted for Trump and they're willing to consider other alternatives like a third party, not necessarily Biden. So,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
I just,
I'm concerned. I'm concerned not only for black and Latino males, voting age and on up. I'm also concerned about college students,
oh yeah,
with the Gaza
oh yeah,
issue. The demonstrations are the tip of the iceberg. That's just an indication of where the most active of the politically minded college and university students are. The reality is that there's a whole lot more negative criticism towards Biden for not acting more stringently in terms of limiting money and arms going to the Israelis.
well,
I
well,
actually I share their criticism.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, let's talk
it's not
about
a good.
this. Yeah,
Yeah, go
well,
ahead.
yeah, let's talk about this because that was our next topic about the demonstrations. I was also there when the demonstrations and the occupation broke out in Columbia, and that
Right,
spread to Yale, and then I don't know if
NYU.
NYU and there Emerson, other colleges in Boston, Northeastern. There was then USC. I had some altercations or canceling the graduation.
Stanford
So
and Berkeley.
yeah, Berkeley, UC. There was also instances at UCLA. So here, all this is within the week. A lot of people look at this and they say, well, of course you got to be against these things because these demonstrations are anti-Semitic. I don't necessarily agree with that,
Yeah,
but here's the thing: is it possible to be pro-Gaza? And we've talked about this before, but can you be pro-Gaza and pro-Israeli at the same time, being critical of Israeli policy? At what point does being critical of Israeli policy turn you into an anti-Semitic? Because, I know pro-Israel and anti-Israel people who are against the Netanyahu government. Can you be anti-Netanyahu, anti-Israeli policy and not be anti-Semitic?
The simple answer is yes, you can. The problem is who's making the judgment as to whether or not you're being anti Semitic. Because the standard that the Israeli nationalists take, right, is that any criticism of Israel or any of its policies, any criticism of Jewish people, is anti Semitic. And so that we can't talk about right now we're being anti-Semitic by entertaining the possibility that you could be critical and not be anti-Semitic. You know,
Yeah, that you can be critical of policy, but they'll say, well, if you're critical of policy and the policy is all for the creation of the Israeli state, you must be against or anti-Zionist, that's anti-Semitic, away with you. I mean,
yeah,
it's
sure.
almost a way to end debate and free speech
Well,
and
sure. Well, okay. Let's take a look at the other side of that. Okay, if we look at what the meaning of of Zionism, I'm sorry, is, the basic standard for Zionism is that Israel has a right to exist, that there has to be an Israeli state. Okay. Now, immediately, the reason that term is called Zionism, right? That concept is called Zionism, is because no such thing exists in the Torah. You know,
mm,
there's no reference, no equivalent to Old Testament reference to the existence of an Israel. Okay. However, Promised Land, Canaan, right? We know all of those stories. Okay. And so it's loosely based on that. All right. Um, the there are elements of the Torah that make it sound that as though the Israelis can have a nation only when essentially our time on earth is over, right? Right. And then it seems as though we're talking about another level of existence, okay, or another phase of existence. So, okay, what that's if that's Zionism, then there are people who are actually Jewish who are strict readers of the Torah that say that's wrong. There are Jewish people, there are Israelis who are critical of that position. Okay, so are they anti-Semitic?
um, self-hate, they call it,
Yeah,
self-hating
right
Jew.
on, right
Yeah.
on. Okay, so if any of us, if I'm critical of some behavior within the Filipino American community, and I am critical of significant
Yeah.
elements
Yeah.
within the culture, that makes me anti-Filipino, right? And I've been called that. I've been called un-Ilocano, right? Fake
Yeah.
Ilocano, all that kind of stuff. And that rises out of course, strong feelings of ethno-nationalism. And
Yep.
that's what we're confronted with in these circumstances. Okay.
So how
So
do you sidestep it to get to conversation, or does it just stymie conversation and discussion?
I think it not only stymies conversation, I think it encourages further polarization and the possibility of violent confrontation. Um, and here's the problem: uh, when you start a movement like this, and an action around a movement which is pro Gaza, you're going to get accused of being pro Hamas and pro terrorist. That's happening. It's been
Right.
happening, right?
Right.
And those kinds of accusations are primarily coming out of the mouths of the very predictable right in Congress and all over the country, and especially on so-called conservative media outlets. Okay, I
So
say
hey,
so-called.
there's common ground.
I
Common
say
ground.
so-called. I say so-called because these are not conservative outlets, right?
Oh,
They're viciously authoritarian and anti-democratic, right? Viciously.
Mm.
Okay? And the good thing about the Trump trial is that a lot of
Mm.
this stuff, especially the fake news manufactured by the likes of Mr. Pecker, right? Uh, and I mean, it's not
Yeah, yeah.
only right the Inquirer. There's also the Star. Is that's still around, right? The National Star, and all those kinds of
I think
outlets
so. Yeah.
in print. Um, the neat thing about it is that the people who did the fake news are saying it's fake news. They're coming right out and saying it was fake news. And so that's a major element that comes out of this trial. Whether or not Trump wins or loses, okay, it's a matter of juridical record, right? That it's
Yeah.
fake freaking news, okay?
Right. Well,
So
you can't call it journalism. Really PR. It's really something else.
it is.
It's
It is.
and the fact they call it checkbook journalism,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
thought
really
that was cool. I wish I came up with the term.
well,
Checkbook
checkbook
journalism.
journalism is an old term
Oh, I
for
didn't realize that.
yeah. You pay for the story, but if you don't publish it, then you're uh, capture
Right, whatever.
what is
Yeah.
their term?
Well, you can pay. Well,
You-
what it means is it's two sided, right? You can pay to have a good story put out, and you can pay to have a bad story choked to
yeah,
death.
it's a catch and
Catch
kill,
and kill.
right?
Well, see,
And
like I said, though, that only emphasizes the kill part when you say
uh,
catch and kill. There's also we could put out a fake story for you.
oh yeah, the fake
That's the
story.
other
That's
side.
yeah. Well, but it's all this is manipulation, and
Yes.
so it's always on the other side of journalism.
And
Journalism,
so if we're going to talk about the students,
yeah,
uh, 90% of the responses that I get from students when I ask how are you informed, social media.
yeah.
The sad part is less than 20% consult other what I would consider objective and reasonably reliable journalistic sources.
So, what are you saying that the people who are occupying, the protesters, are? It's a mix. There may be some who are very informed, who are leaders, but for the most part, those who are occupying in tents,
Significantly well and
yeah.
act of an understanding.
Oh, Dan.
Yeah. So, okay, are we
I
back?
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, we're
So,
back.
yeah, there's some kind of conspiracy against us, dude. But
Yeah.
anyway, okay, so there's going to be a reasonable number that are well informed, okay, and
Mhm,
have some grasp, right, of
mhm,
objective facts on all sides,
yeah.
okay. But I don't know that it's 50% of everybody that's out there acting. I think that the greater majority of people are informed in a very biased manner,
Right.
right from the onset, right from the beginning, because there's an algorithm that's built up for their news feed, right?
Mm,
And it picks the kind of stuff that they've shown an interest in, and it becomes repetitive and internalized.
right.
So
Well, it just
that's like a
informs.
parent.
Yeah, it informs people who would otherwise be there. It's not necessarily. Uh, it's not necessarily lies, but it could be seen as maybe.
It's
I don't want,
clearly biased. It's
yeah, it's
clearly biased.
biased. Yeah, it's. I don't. I guess propaganda. It,
Well, there is some that, once again, we're splitting hairs, but I think members of our audience would understand that there's a difference between mere bias and actual propaganda.
yeah,
Okay,
there would be. Yeah. So what
but
I'm
but
trying.
it can can't but it can come from both sides. You can't say propaganda and then only associate that with the right. You
What
have
I'm.
to you have to accept the fact that propaganda also emanates
Oh
from the
yeah.
left.
Right. Correct. So all right. So what I'm trying to get at is are the are the activists out there in the tents are they misinformed, or are they
I,
taking a an approach that may not get them to their goal in as peaceful and a judicious way as possible?
I'm working my way through a book on misinformation. right now, and it's pretty good. It's not as I was more hopeful about the approach that it took than I've realized by my reading. But it's by a psychologist. You know, my whole position ever since I was in an undergrad was that much of political science is really psychology,
Yeah.
especially mass psychology, and that's what you have to consider when you look at the formation of movements that begin with demonstrations and call people's attention right to the issue. The good thing about demonstrations is it calls people attention to the issue. Then the question is, how well informed are they, or and even how willing are they to be really well informed? Because unfortunately, once people see a mass action and they've made decisions that I agree with the premises, right, that are the foundation of this mass action, they go and join, and then automatically they're in a position of having not only to propagate, right, this profess the mass action rationale, right, but they become defensive of it, and that starts the wider polarization, okay, and the likelihood
So,
of confrontation.
well, clearly, we only have confrontation when police are brought in. I mean, you look at the video from Emory University. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
it's almost like
especially New York.
you want
You
to
know?
spice. If you want a spicy concoction, add cops, and it'll get spicy fast. If you want it peaceful, keep the cops out. And I think that's what they've done in New York at Columbia. They've they've made this a private university. Cops are outside, and the occupiers are there, and deadlines are missed. But there's a kind of negotiation going on, no matter how slow it's going. Uh, how do you? I mean, how do you prevent violence? I mean, I wasn't joking when I say keep the cops out, but bring cops in, you're going to get violence.
Yeah, you have to do self policing from inside the movement,
Yeah,
and that's very it's very difficult to maintain
yeah,
that because you don't once you start this kind of activity, you don't know who's going to join. And there's a lot of provocation coming down via social media that has its origins, all over the world, predominantly from Russia, China, a bit from Iran. Other people jump in from African countries, but
no,
and then there's also the internal misinformation. And there's a category of misinformation and there's a category of disinformation, right? Which is a much more active propagandistic kind of media and expression. That's where we're at. That's
well,
where we're
so
at.
right,
So a lot of what these people are seeing
yeah,
is worse than propaganda. It's disinformation from the enemy, essentially the same people that are provoking the war, not only in the Israeli versus Gaza, but they're provoking also Russian
yeah.
aggression.
Well, see, here's the thing: you see the images and the on campuses, but we don't know what's going inside the heads of the protesters. What are they being fed? And we don't really get a sense of the negotiations, except from what the reports are. So they're calling for boycott, divestment,
Yeah,
and sanctions.
yeah, and they parallel it with South Africa,
Right,
of
and
40 years ago.
this is in my year. I mean, this is like after Vietnam
Right,
came the movement to do something about South Africa and
right,
apartheid. And I remember having a white armband saying divest in South Africa.
right.
It didn't quite happen in my year, but graduation day, I
It
wore that.
eventually happened. Yeah,
Yeah, it did eventually happen. And so now that's the key thing. I mean, boycott, divestment, sanctions, and of course, a lot of people will hear that, and they'll see it as pro-Palestinian, and they'll see that as anti-Semitic because of that,
yep, yep.
and that brings us back to a, really a standstill where there's no discussion. There's just the idea of boycott, divestment, and sanctions is just rejected out of hand. But that's the demand. I mean, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
in all the reporting, I don't usually see the demands on the television reports, but you got to read deeply into various reports. And, oh, this is what they're asking for. At Columbia, they let a deadline pass so they can continue, and probably they'll continue until summer vacation, and then they'll send people home. I don't know. It seems like that both teams are kind of running out the clock, or maybe it's going to get desperate soon. But when I look at the situation, I first thought of Vietnam, but
Right.
I thought of all the demonstrations that caused death, Kent State, right?
Yeah.
And then I also thought about you, because the San Francisco State strike over ethnic studies. Do you see similarities here?
Well, it was more than over ethnic studies; it was over everything. But the main objective that was realized as a result of the strike was the formation of the first school of ethnic studies. Um, so yeah, but it was about everything. It was anti-war and pro civil rights in general terms. It was pro free speech. And while we had much freer speech at SF State, they were cracking down at Berkeley, and quite violently. Uh, so that even after their Third World Liberation Front succeeded in establishing a department, right, of ethnic studies, and things started to calm down, um, People's Park came up
Right.
as an issue, and that was extremely violent. With police attacks and everything. I mean, it was really bad. They
Well,
had choppers up, dropping smoke, incendiary devices and
yeah.
smoke. You know,
Well, Dan, why was it violent there in Berkeley, about 30 minutes away, and at San Francisco State, it was a little more peaceful? Or was it?
it was
Did,
violent. It was violent, but it did not lead to the use of anything beyond batons and pepper spray. Luckily, right? But the use of batons, and especially this particular kind of baton that was shaped like a katana, like a long Japanese sword.
Mhm.
Okay, those were eventually outlawed, by the way. But the other standard baton is still in use today,
Yeah.
and those caused a lot of very serious injuries, and a lot of
Well,
people were hospitalized as a result. But it never guns were drawn, and in one instance that I can recall, one plainclothes officer was disarmed. He drew out his revolver, and luckily, people simply disarmed him, and instead of taking his gun and shooting him, which was just never likely a possibility. So one of the reasons I think that it didn't get much more violent is that even though people were saying things like "off the pig," which means kill the cops, it was seen as rally kind of rhetoric rather than actual action, a call to actual action,
all
and
right,
that
but
was the difference.
when you see the images today over
Yes.
Gaza and Israel, and you remember what it was like in '68,
Yep.
San
68,
Francisco,
69.
San
Yeah.
Francisco State, and the student riots. Well, they call them riots, but they
They
are
call them
really
riots.
they're really
Even
protest.
even relatively recent publications, works of literature, they still call them riots.
Were they
And
riots? Were they
no,
riots?
no, they weren't. They were not. There were rallies. There were
Yeah.
major demonstrations. They were especially major demonstrations downtown, at City Hall and in the plaza.
All right.
But
So they were. Yeah.
they weren't riots.
All right. There were rallies. All right. So when
Yeah.
you see, you
There were
have
more
the.
riots in reaction to Dan White,
Oh yeah, the
you know, uh,
supervisor who
and
killed Harvey Milk.
particularly from militant gays.
All right.
Uh,
So all right, when you see the images today, Israel, Palestine, in the student demonstrations on campus. How do you feel about what you did in San Francisco State in 1968? Similar? Was it similar, or what? Do you feel in solidarity with them, or do you think they got it wrong, or did they
Yeah,
really?
I haven't checked with all of my cohort that were strikers, but I believe that we are all in solidarity with the people of Gaza and the West Bank and the Palestinian cause generally. Uh, so we're in danger of being called pro Hamas as a result. There may be people among us that are actually pro Hamas, okay, but I doubt it. Okay, I think I've talked to Palestinian friends of mine, many of them businessmen, and some graduates from SF State. Others have gone on to get their doctorates, and they're working at Berkeley, at UC Berkeley, and they're not pro Hamas. Okay, and they have been strongly Palestinian for a long time. Um, I One of those students, or one of my former students, who's one of the Palestinian businessmen, has family in Gaza, and so we have been talking about the reality of life for Palestinians for 30 years. And so, what has come as an abrupt shock, I think, to a lot of younger people, a lot of students, is the length of time, the duration of the absolute inhumane uh, kind of persecution and prosecution of Palestinians that has been carried out by the Israeli government and by Israeli people. For example, like the settlers.
Yeah.
So, in it, if we go back to what is anti-Semitic, if we criticize the settlers, who by all international standards have broken the law, right? Uh, we say they break the law. What are we now anti-Semitic? Okay, they've broken the law, and you've asked me before in previous conversations, what should happen, and I said the first thing should be the retreat of settlers from the West Bank. Okay, that's the first thing. You want to set, that they're dead set against a two-state solution,
Yeah.
and they have been. You know damn well that they've been talking about the failure of the two-state solution. It's a stupid notion, and they've been pushing that position for 30 years.
And yet, it's the only way out, it would seem, if we're going to have peace anytime soon. A two-state solution.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So,
I've been looking at whether or not there are people who are researching how you would do that, how you would do the two-state thing when you've got Gaza way over on the coast and you've got the West Bank way over on the river. So with a lot of acreage in between, how do you do a two-state thing? And so it comes down to how much territory are the Israelis willing to yield in order to establish a workable two-state system.
probably
And
zero.
you know,
Oh,
been enough informed. I'm sure that the people who are into political science and international relations have been,
yeah.
but
All right.
they how well they're informed about the economic relationship as well. You know, it's not just a class race thing. It literally is a neo-colonial relationship. The relationship between Israel and Palestine. Um, yeah,
And the colonized are the Palestinians.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
so how, again, all right, so you say there's some solidarity. You look back at your time in the student rallies in 1968 at San Francisco State,
Yeah,
and you look,
demonstrations is okay. We had the picket line and all that. And there was a lot of confrontation with cops.
yeah.
There was at least one bombing incident that was pretty scary. We were very much against that. Very
Well,
critical of it.
how would you counsel these younger people today in terms of dealing with the situation to keep it on target, peaceful, with maybe a path toward some kind of negotiated settlement that could end the occupation and
Well,
bring
it
the
has to go
guys
if
home?
you have to have a definable goal, and their goal right now is defined, but the path to that goal is not clear. The only thing that they're doing is the demonstrations. I don't know what the negotiations are like, okay, or if there are any, because the administrations sound like they're putting out to the public, we're not gonna divest. There's no way we're gonna divest. We're not gonna do any of that stuff, and we want the demonstrations and the occupations over. That's generally what's going on across the board. Um, the if they really want the kind of results that we saw that took time with in South Africa, right? What they need to do is they need to work with the board of trustees in the CSU system. They need to work with the regents and find allies in those positions of authority. Okay, because among the regents, especially, are a lot of high end, well moneyed people.
Yeah,
Okay,
but you're talking about things that it's not going to be over in a day.
no, not at all.
I
And
mean,
that's
so
what you have to understand. That you're going to be none of that stuff is going to be realized in a day. I've got there's a the League of Filipino Students is a very active, very left of center, progressive to radical organization at SF State, and um, I have been to a couple of events that they've held, and because they're critical of the situation in Israel, but their their other major critical perspective and objective is fees. Why are fees continuing to be raised?
right.
It's making even the CSU system unaffordable for even middle class students, and so they want to attack that. And they have really accurate criticisms of how the budget that comes from Sacramento, of course, is being parceled out, and what the system generally, CSU, not just campuses individually, CSU system has investments in, just like the criticism of Stanford, right, and Cal, and all the other schools, Columbia, whatever, Harvard, and so when I what I said to them was, "That's fine. Your criticisms are accurate, but you're not going to affect the budget in real terms in this manner." Okay, you have to make your arguments with allies that are in the legislature and allies within the governor's office, right? To get something done. And then I said, all of your criticisms are accurate, and the way the funding is going and where it's being spent, it's all accurate. That there's too much of that going towards administration. The administrations are too broad. There's too many people at that level of pay. We should have a plan to retire people out, and as they retire, you don't refund and reestablish and actually hire more people to cover that position, which is how things have gotten out of hand. Geometric
Yeah.
expansion of administrations.
Now,
I said, so those are the kind of
now
things
you're talking about a real campaign, and now you're
that's
talking
right.
about a real effort to try to make change. So if we're talking about this, um, you know, the the term that they use, BSM, right?
Mhm.
To where is that term? God, the to or BDS, excuse me, BDS, which is come on, right at the tip, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. So you're really talking about the way out of this is for the leadership of the students to build allies among trustees. They need a couple of
And regions.
they need a couple of regents. They need a couple of old hedge fund guys who see
Yep.
eye and eye with the protesters. Somehow that doesn't
Yep.
seem like it's going to happen to me.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. There are a lot more people that are pro Palestine
Mm.
among the educated elite that are well moneyed. There are a lot more people. Um, you know, a lot of Israel's wealth. comes from, of course, the United States supporting them. I mean, we buy a lot of their stuff, a lot of their products,
Mm.
and one of their products is really, it's electronic warfare, right?
Yeah.
Drones, spy equipment, right? Satellite related oversight kinds of equipment, and basic guns. The Uzi is still one of the most popular submachine guns in the world, right? And that was originated by the Israelis.
All right,
Uh,
but here's the thing: if that's the way, do you see anything that indicates that these student leaders are working toward that end? Because it seems to me like
no,
this
no,
seems
I'm
like
not
a
an
legit
insider.
protest.
Look at just because I don't know that doesn't
Yeah,
mean that it's not going on.
yeah,
So I don't when I yeah you have to earn the trust of people in order to get information like that. And all they know about me is that I'm a has been ex radical that had a 53-year history of being a professor or a lecturer and then a professor in the College of Ethnic Studies, and then I get called on to talk about that history, and I am I will do those historical discussions. But one of the things that I am annoyed by is that people aren't interested enough in how we survived for over 50 years because it's a constant struggle. We were at SF State. Our college was threatened with our very existence at least 5 times in my recollection.
yeah,
At least 5 times. The first time within the first 2 years of our existence, when President Hayakawa essentially refused to rehire 90% of the original lecturers and faculty for Black Studies.
yeah.
And so I was really fearful. And I knew that what we needed to do was, excuse me, what we needed to do was reinforce our alliances with community leaders, local
Yeah.
community leaders, national community leaders, to let them know that that threat was afoot.
I
And
mean,
that was enough.
what you're talking about is, like I said before, campaigning, real politicking,
Real
real
politics.
real relationship building.
Yes.
Uh, and I don't get that from the reports that I'm seeing. I get the sense that here's some people intense. They're there. They're a physical presence. They're kind of menacing, but they're harmless. Violence will happen if police get sent in. So I hope that doesn't happen. What is your advice then to the people who are leading the student protesters? And being that you're a professor emeritus, what is your advice to the administrations of these universities?
Well, I haven't, I haven't dared to give advice to the administrations. Uh, I, the reason I'm laughing is I do know the administrators, right? I have shared more than one meal with the president of SF State and I know her provost, the vice president, very well. She was formerly our dean and a long term experienced faculty member of the College of Ethnic Studies.
Right,
So,
but you don't
but
have a. There's no problem at San Francisco State right
well,
now.
I have my way of rendering advice is typically I'm anticipatory. I can see
Ah,
things happening that are going to result in a conflict down the road. So
ah,
I usually, in a some kind of a in a humorful way, make reference to those possibilities and and different scenarios so that people can try and negotiate in advance. Okay, the
okay,
problem is this particular issue is really hard cast. And the reason is the Jewish American community has made substantial contributions to Jewish studies at SF State and in other programs. Now, remember that there's a high school accreditation, right, for ethnic studies, and we're still in the process of trying to figure out how much ethnic stuff can go into California high school texts, right, history texts. Okay, which has always been for me, wow, that's ridiculous, right? It's like, okay, you can have the history text over here, but you're going to have volumes of reference material, right? That's linked to the text because there's no way you can fit all that stuff. I mean, there's like over 200 different ethnic groups in California, man. How are you going to handle that, right? And so what it comes down to is developing, yes, some level of personal rapport with trustees and regents and members of administration. Um, my advice would be keep it calm, keep the cops off campus, right? Try and find leaders from among the students that you can negotiate with. That's eventually how we settled the strike. Hayakawa himself figured out he's not going to snuff out the protests and the demonstrations, and that I think he was told either by Governor Reagan at the time or the trustees or both, right? Clean it up, shut it down, negotiate whatever you need to do. Okay. And he never signed the final settlement it was negotiated by a select group, right? A select committee that Hayakawa himself constructed, and it was leading, California. I'm sorry, San Francisco community leaders, including people like the recently passed Cecil Williams, and anyway, so that's exactly what it came down to. Is that we had these relationships with administrators, not necessarily the top administrators, but people within the administrative structure at SF State that were willing to aid us by giving us information that made our positions more solid in terms of understanding what the processes were and where the resistance was going to be. And so, we got good information. We developed better strategies and tactics, and it came down to a settlement. And that's exactly the kind of approach that I suggest to both sides. Okay, is that you find good leadership and go towards the middle. Here's the problem: the Jewish American community has set up walls, man, and they put money into these schools. And now, when you're looking at public schools, they're hurting for money because of Prop 13. We never regained the level of support and state funding that we had previous to Prop 13, and budgets had already been being scaled back.
Yeah.
Okay, starting in the early 70s. Prop 13 didn't pass until what, 78?
Yeah.
And then from that point on, public education in California suffered really badly. Okay, really badly. Now, uh, what I told the students was, look, everything that you're doing, all the criticism you have is great, but you're not going to change that overnight. What you need to do is develop allies. And then I pointed at other people on the trustees, particularly people from the Bay Area, right? Because there's greater likelihood that they can get in contact with them, right? I said, have you tried to contact so and so and so and so? And they said, no, we're working on X person. And I said, the person's a member of the administration, okay, and a high member of the administration, and their job is to watch the back, okay, of the president of the institution. That's their job, okay. So they're not going to put their job on the line, all right.
Yeah.
So you're actually looking at the wrong person for building the possibility of a relationship that could even form an alliance.
So,
That's not where you want to go.
well, I hear what you're saying. I just don't know if the people who are negotiating right now, especially with summer vacation coming up, if as soon as the summer vacation bell rings,
It's
they're
going to
gone.
dissipate. Yeah, it's going to
Yeah,
dissipate.
they're gone.
I don't know if they'll be gone, but I think they'll dissipate. If they're going to stay organized, what I would say is you got to take shifts. Have people be able to leave, but then use the platoon method.
Hey,
Have people come in and cover so that the place stays occupied, stays
hey,
peaceful, but your representation is still there. I saw this work in Europe. When Linda and I were touring Spain and Portugal. They've had similar problems to what we had here. Students were protesting there, and they were also protesting homelessness.
Yeah.
So there were
Well,
homeless camps, right? I mean, I felt right at home, going right down the
well,
middle drive in
I
Madrid and yeah, in Lisbon, and there was
I
homeless
I think
encampments.
a lot will be. I mean, a lot should happen in the next couple of weeks. I mean, if this thing goes
Yes.
on,
Well,
as we get the
people are really
graduate.
ticked off now because they're canceling graduations, right? So
Well,
you
I
got
heard
kids.
USC is. Is
Yeah,
anyone else?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I
mean,
know Columbia
if
might be
other
doing it
schools,
too. Yeah.
yeah, if other schools do, and then, like I said, as people go off to their, administrators and faculty go off to summer vacation, and the kids go off to summer vacation, and the place is empty. Maybe it's totally different. Maybe we'll, but I don't. I mean, I look at the situation and I'm scared because I don't see a way out. I don't
Right,
see a way
right.
out, and then I see
It goes
this.
frustration, aggression. You
Well,
got to go back to psychology and understand frustration, aggression.
yeah. Well,
People get
I also see what happens when anyone who talks is labeled an Semite,
right.
anti-Semitic,
Well,
and
we're now at risk of that. So I'm ready.
well, I mean, like I said, I think you can be pro. You can be pro-Israel. You can be anti-ruling party policy. You can be anti Netanyahu. You can be and still be pro-Israel.
Well, you mean pro-Zionist in the standard sense. Zionist meaning Israel has a right to exist. You see,
Yeah,
the problem is that over the last 30 to 40 years, because of the prosecution and persecution of Palestinians, right? The term Zionist now means people who are willing to carry out that kind of persecution and prosecution.
yeah,
Okay. So that's the problem. So, on the one hand, all of us who are critical of anything having to do with Israeli policy and governmental practice, right, are labeled anti Semitic. And on the other hand, anybody who points out the fact that Palestinians have been abused and misused and unjustly, even by the Israelis' own legal standards, right, as well as international standards, then we're seen as pro Hamas. That's
yeah.
the problem.
Yeah, they've ended debate, and here's the situation now. Now we have the universities that are trying to be free speech and also make things safe, and also hold on to their money, hold on to their donations. How
And
do
there
the
it is. That's the real crux of the matter is the money.
how do
And
the
that's what it came
universities?
down to with the South Africa. I mean, remember it started with a protest against Krugerrands,
Oh
and
yeah,
so,
yeah,
you got to sell your Krugerrands and quit buying those things. That's how it started. And then when people actually did that, all of a sudden the major corporation said, "Uh oh, we got a problem."
so
The Japanese started pulling out, and they needed chromium, and they needed it's a rich source of chromium, and also glass, high
right.
quality glass for camera lenses, right?
Oh yeah, Japan.
Spectacles came out of there. And so when you had those groups, the Japanese, the Chinese, remember how many Chinese there were in South Africa?
Oh yeah,
When they started going nationalist, the first people they kicked out were the Indians, right? There's too many Indians here. They got then the Chinese, they got too many Chinese here. Well, you're slitting your own throat economically because if
yeah,
you can't replace those people, you
yeah.
know, internally, then you got a problem. And they suddenly realized that within about 2 or 3 years, they spun around and said, "Oh, okay, we got to have some limited relationships with these people and let them in."
So Dan, final word on this. How long does this last, and what's the way out?
Oh man, I think it really depends on once again on the local level, the students developing relationships with the bodies of authority, right? And a university level. Okay, yeah, I know it's hard, but
I don't know if there's any time for that.
that's the way it's gotten done.
But
And
how are they going to ward off the police? Because they've managed to keep the police at bay in the private universities. The public universities may be harder.
it's good. It will be harder. I could guarantee you it's going to be harder because one of the problems with starting a movement is You don't know who's going to join, and there's going to be intentional provocateurs,
Mm,
intentional provocateurs, and some of them will. I always was very suspicious of that group called the Black Bloc
mm.
that would turn things violent over in Berkeley, and they started destroying the doors and windows at Eshelman Hall. Remember all that?
Yeah,
And they were masked, and they were all in black. And I said, who the hell are those guys? And how were they associated with the general movement at Berkeley right at the time? And so the same thing is going to happen here. That the likelihood is there are going to be provocateurs. There are going to be people at SF State when we were doing the strike. There were people who were behind us that were throwing billiard balls,
yeah.
bottles, and all that stuff to provoke the cops. And so
And
the people up front who weren't doing violent things, but who were trying to push the cops back by just moving forward, right? They
that,
were getting beat up. They were
yeah.
getting beaten up and hospitalized.
And of course, the cameras, the media captures whatever it sees, and it gets misinterpreted. And and then where are we? We're nowhere again.
Well, it not only gets misinterpreted, you got editors, right? At the office,
Yeah,
uh, in the production line, and they decide what's going to go up. And so there's a
yeah.
big difference, for example, between what KQED and KRON put up during the SF state strike and what the other guys put up. KRON tried to do an honest job, but NBC cracked down on them. NBC came out with their own quote white papers, right?
Mm,
That looked at the overall circumstances of conflict,
mm,
both political as well as the kind of physical conflict, and they did two-hour specials just on San Francisco, and one of them was focused mostly on the strike, and the other one was on the part of their series in the decline of cities, American cities, right?
ah, a familiar thing. 50 years later,
Yeah, that's right.
it's the same
That's
same
right.
thing.
You
Yeah,
know,
well, so Dan, do you see? I mean, it's not far fetched to say, look at these strikes, and then, or look at these protests at schools and on campus, and they have a legacy that goes back to Kent State and Vietnam and to San
yeah, that's
Francisco
right.
State. I mean, it's there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is
No,
what.
we tried to encourage them, and faculty tried to encourage students to fight against Prop 13, but it didn't get very much support. People didn't understand the likely outcome, the likely and it hit very fast because as soon as the budgets went down, right, beginning in '79, big layoffs started happening at the local school level. You remember that? You
Yeah.
were around for that.
Oh yeah, yeah. All right. So back to the protest. Would you encourage kids, students who have been on the sidelines to join?
Yes, I would. Yes, I
You,
would. But I would encourage them to join, understanding that what you need to do is develop relationships with people that are in higher positions of authority, even if they're conflictual relationships.
yeah,
It's much harder to crush people when you have some kind of personal contact, because because through that process you humanize the enemy,
yeah.
right? And
But
that's really important. You have
this
to
is
humanize the antagonists.
this is also presupposing that there's some goal, that there's something in mind that they want, and you're
Yeah.
not out there. It's not a party. It's. I mean, I thought what they wanted was, they're calling for a ceasefire, but that's not really within their realm. They can't. That's not something that they can bring about. You can call for a
Well, they think
ceasefire.
they could bring it about by criticizing the hell out of Biden and
Yeah,
and the Democrats, and showing that they're ineffective in stopping the Israeli aggression,
yeah,
and so especially their inhumane level of aggression. So there is a goal there, and it is possible. I think Biden could crack down on Netanyahu. He is disliked by 90%, 85, 90% of his own population, and he
right.
knows he's done. He knows
Yeah,
he's done. If the war ends, or if there's a substantial ceasefire that lasts, He's done. People are going to even be more angry when they realize how many of the hostages are already dead,
Oh,
and how they died. But the problem is that Hamas is not going to let hostages go because that's their main line of leverage. Because obviously the Israelis have little or no concern for the non-combatant population in Gaza, that they are now trying to shuffle around so they can attack Rafah.
yeah,
So there are things that the Biden administration can do, and so that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that people are going to get more frustrated at that level, and so they'll act that frustration out on college and university campuses. I don't think it's going to broaden. I don't think the movement's going to broaden. When we went out on strike at SF State, a lot of the people who were engaged on campus were not students at SF State,
oh
but
yeah,
but they were students. They weren't just provocateurs either. They were people who were in harmony with us, and they joined the picket line, and they came out and hung around just to be part of the history, I guess. But I knew that they were students that were coming from the community colleges, not just City College, but College of San Mateo, the local colleges of Merritt, across the bay,
yeah,
and so Laney. So there were a lot of people like that. USF people were coming by, and hanging. So that I think is going to happen in this instance too, because it's not just a student movement; it really is a youth movement. But like earlier on, we talked about Black and Latino males.
yeah.
Yeah, I really am worried about that. I think,
Well, I mean, worried about who they're going to vote for,
yeah, or if they will vote.
and so this
So
is going
either
to be,
way,
yeah, it's going to
subtractive
be,
or active, right?
yeah,
Either way, it's harmful.
it's going to be incumbent on Biden to do the right thing, and the question will be, will he?
How do you do that, though? I think he has been doing the right thing. I don't think he's gotten enough credit for stuff that he has done.
Yeah,
You have to ask Black and Latino men, what is it that you want, and what wasn't done? Okay, what do you think was not done? Because they want something that's directly right beneficial to them.
right. Well, they
So
want to see something. Yeah,
you got to ask. You have
they
to
want
ask.
to
The
see,
only way you're going to find out is what do you want. Okay,
yeah, they want to see something tangible because
that's right.
politics to them is all pie in the sky. Oh yeah, we at least with Obama.
It's verbiage. It's rhetoric, and
Yeah,
it's not physical.
yeah, but at least with Obama, you see people say, "Well, because of Obama, I got Obamacare." A lot of people have health care now.
Sure,
You
sure.
know, a lot, and I can say that people in the Central Valley who were upside down in their home because of Obama, they had those. The home mortgages were like turned upside down or
Right.
right side up. Because of programs within the Obama administration. So there's
Well,
something.
and Biden is doing that now. I mean, and part of the yeah,
Student loan.
there's homework is relief right now.
Yeah, yeah, and student loan. I mean, so there are things but people unless they know it, unless they felt it, they they're saying they shake their heads and say, oh, I don't see how Biden's going to do
Because I'm ticked off too. Do you see some? I mean, it's scary, man. We're out on the street yesterday, and
Yeah.
$7, man, at a Chevron station. $7 a freaking gallon, man.
Is it 7 where you are?
$7? Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man,
Well, I stopped shopping or buying gas at standard stations, millennia ago,
yeah,
because they
seven
always
bucks.
had high prices, and I started going almost exclusively to Arco, and then of course there's Costco,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
well,
and,
seven
and, and
bucks.
even there it was $5 the last time that I filled
Yeah,
up.
I think it's around there where I am, but I haven't bought gas. I've been taking subways and walking. In New
Right
York,
on.
you walk everywhere.
That's New
So,
York, dude. That's New York, man.
but now I'm driving. I'm thinking, oh man, so I'm going to get sticker
Yeah, my
shock.
problem is we go to New York. Linda does not want to take subways.
Yeah, I know.
Too
I don't blame
rickety,
her. I don't blame
too
you. Walk.
rickety, and too dirty, right? And I said, it's actually not bad, but it's true. It's rickety. I mean, I've been there. I've
Yeah.
been in there 2 different seasons, and when it's raining, and you're down at the stations and looking at some of the rails, it's like
Oh yeah.
raining down there.
Yeah.
It's,
Oh yeah. Yeah. All right. So Dan, well, I guess we won't have time to talk about the immunity case
Oh, we can
with.
do it quickly.
Okay,
Let's
all
do
right.
it
So, all
quickly.
right, quickly. So here's the thing: the one phrase or the one line of questioning that got me, it wasn't whether or not if you know the president could order a coup or
Right,
order
right.
assassination, but it was Ketanji Brown Jackson's line of questioning. It says, if,
Outstanding.
yeah, if she said if we give immunity, we're opening up crime central here
Yeah,
in
that's right.
West
It'll
Wing,
be a hub. It'll be a hub for
a
crime.
hub of criminal activity, and that is it. I mean, you there's some things that are legal that presidents and legislators do with corporations. Think of the amount of illegal things they could do if you had no accountability, and if you can get away with it.
Okay. Well, why is it that her statements, her questions rang so true? And
I,
the reason is really simple because
uh,
it's foreseeable given the past practice of a guy that's on trial right
oh
now
yeah, well, it
with
definitely
34
was
counts.
right. It
Okay.
definitely was.
Yeah. So it has no meaning, right? Or little meaning. And it would be laughed out of the court literally if there hadn't been the backdrop of the reality of these actions, alleged
right.
crime committed by this guy and his administration.
So,
And
so now,
and aided by people in Arizona now, right?
yeah,
So
right, right.
several of the people who ran his campaign, plus 11 idiot electors.
But one thing that got me also in that line of questioning, Amy Coney Barrett
Oh,
said
she
to
was good.
yeah, she
I
said
thought
to
it was
the
good.
attorney, said to the Trump
Yeah,
attorney, said,
trying to say, is there a distinction between what is official
yeah,
and what is private?
yeah,
And
and then she went over, she described everything that Trump did,
that's
and
right.
said, very hypothetically, it was this guy.
Is that official or is that private? Is there?
Yeah.
Okay,
He said,
so you
well, that would be private, and yeah, you could
yeah,
sue us. But, and I thought, okay, so Amy Coney Barrett is joining the ladies,
Mr.
joining
Sauer has got to change the spelling of his name.
yeah. Well, well,
Just go
they've
with
got the
SOUR. That would make a whole lot more sense.
yeah.
Because what
Well,
he was saying was spoiled milk, man. I
yeah.
mean, that is no good.
Well,
That
I
was so,
just think,
you know what was also really stupid?
yeah.
Roberts and Alito. My
Oh yeah,
God. My
yeah.
God. I was so embarrassed, man. And then I don't know, the commentators I was watching on MSNBC were saying, Roberts is clearly concerned with the legacy of his court. And it's like, really?
Yeah, yeah, it's going down.
Really?
He's the only one to save it. If he's going to be the guy who's going to be the fifth vote, because if it's the four ladies, right?
Yeah.
Sotomayor, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Amy Coney Barrett, and Kagan. If they're the four votes, who are going to say no immunity,
Right.
and then who's going to be the fifth vote to join them, or the fifth vote to negate them on the other side?
Yeah, yeah. And I think it
It's
would
gonna
be
be Rob-
Roberts if there is limited immunity. There's going to be a compromise in the middle, and it's going to be some kind of limited immunity because there are going to be regular quote core activities. Okay, I was asked to explain what the hell is they making this distinction between official and private. I said it would be better if they said government
Right.
activity versus non-government. Okay,
Yeah, or
so if something
public
is
or
within
private.
the yeah, you could do it that way. You know, it also makes sense
Yeah,
that way. But what is governmental? What is non-governmental? What is public? What is private? Okay, that makes sense. Those kind of oppositional terms make sense. Official. I didn't like to use the term official and juxtaposing that against private. Okay, it makes more
yeah.
sense to use the
Well,
terminology we have just suggested.
I mean, uh, yeah. So government meaning I'm appointing you. Private, I'm bribing you so I can appoint you. I'm bribing people so you can be appointed.
The reason
That would
uh,
be that would be not
it's government if you get paid and it's above board,
yeah,
and it's private if you just volunteer
yeah,
to work within the White House. Okay,
yeah,
does that
yeah.
sound like a reference to the early moments of nepotism that were
Yeah.
attempted
Well,
by the
this
Trump
is
administration?
this is the
Oh,
thing.
okay, we're not going to get paid. Remember how that came down?
Oh yeah, pay us a dollar. Pay us a
We're
dollar.
not going to get paid, but I'm going to make a $2 billion transaction with the Saudis.
Yeah.
As soon as
So,
you lose your election.
yeah. So this is I think it's gonna it'll be close. I mean, it shouldn't be, but
Yeah, it shouldn't be close, and it will be close. I think Biden will win,
yeah.
um,
I mean,
and I think it's really tragic. That if you're, I mean, I'm taking your word for it that you've run into a lot of people who are saying, African Americans who
oh
are
yeah,
saying, yeah. So yeah, I believe that's real. Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's
I've seen that. I've seen that on the campus at State, and it's not just African Americans. It's younger. At least I saw younger men generally.
I think they're just turned off. I mean, if they looked at it
They
and
are.
they read it, they read things and they followed things, I think they'd have a better, more mature view. But right now, it's like they don't care. They
Not
live their
really. They're
lives.
they're, they're anti-system.
Yeah,
They come out and say they're not just critical of Biden. They're just anti-system. They think the system's a failure, and it allows them to rationalize not voting,
yeah,
and just not being just standing there and being critical,
right.
but not engaging in the vote. And that's
It's a
the scary.
rationalization. Yeah, rationalization. All right. Well,
Immunity,
once
partial
again, we're
immunity, Jim.
back.
Immunity for
At,
what you called public acts and acts that are within the core duties and responsibilities of the office. That's what we're talking about. So if it has
yeah,
something to do with the actual execution of your freaking job, okay, that's cool. But
yeah.
but if you're just
But
trying to get
bribery is
people
not
to
one of them.
be on your side, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
bribery is
Well,
not
yeah.
those things.
Well, but see, when Drieben tried to raise the issue of some of the facts having to do with the real case at hand in New York, uh, I think it was Roberts that said, I don't want to go there. I don't want to discuss any of those facts at hand." And like it
Yeah,
was like, why not?
I
Why not?
think I think what they want to do is they want to kick it back lower court, right? Let the lower
Yeah.
courts decide, and then
Well,
so they can just go up
I
and
hope
down.
they do. I hope they don't kick it back. If they kick it back to appeals,
There'll be
it will
delay.
it'll be a delay. But I don't know. The appellate court, I think, is going to stay. They're going to stand by
Yeah.
their position, and they may force them to go full panel. That
Well,
may slow it down, right?
yeah,
So
but this thing didn't have to go to the appellate court in the first place. The Supreme Court could have ruled that it was all right, or
but see, they wanted to stay out of the way at first because they wanted to see whether or not the appellate court would go Trump's way.
yeah,
And
well,
so now that it's clear that they didn't, it helps Trump because they say, okay, no, we want to hear it now. Remember how they waited until the very end
yeah,
of the
December,
period? Yeah,
yeah,
and then they said, okay, we want to hear it now. Okay, when I saw that happen, I said, oh man, this
well,
is so clearly a 6-3 thing.
yeah.
These people, it
I'm
was really
just,
bad. It
but no,
really,
it might be 5-4. Might be 5-4.
I think the outcome is going to be 5-4. Okay,
All right,
I
let's.
believe it or not, I thought that last year, and I jumped on a former student who was clearly looking like a pro-Trumper,
Mm,
and because he's saying, yeah, 6-3, no problem, blah 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 blah, and I said, is that are you calling it? Are you analyzing it? Or are you exercising wishful thinking? And I said 5-4, and I told him why, and it's lining up that way now. But Roberts will sign on with the 4 women if Barrett is one of the people that goes
yeah,
down, right? It has to be
right,
because Kavanaugh obviously was asking dumb questions
yeah.
that were going
Gorsuch,
along. He
so,
wasn't entirely dumb. I thought Alito, boys, that guy's a real piece of work. He's almost as bad as Thomas.
almost maybe we're no, maybe worse. I mean, because he should be better than he is, but man, it's
Well,
terrible.
he's worse in the sense that, yeah, okay, that you expect more of a person who's an actual scholar and a person who's supposedly trying to take an objective position.
Right,
But
but
Thomas is just grossly biased, and he should have recused himself. He shouldn't even be on the court. If there's
yes,
anybody that should be impeached, it's him,
yeah.
right?
All right, Dan, that's it. We covered it quickly.
Woohoo!
I appreciate you
What a
being
ride!
and thanks for coming on. Let's see what happens next week. Stay in touch. Good talking to you again. We
Yep.
didn't even get to talk about the Warriors or the Giants.
Yeah, we can talk about that next time, maybe. The Niners were interesting. Picking
Wide receiver.
Ayuk Jr. They got another wide receiver. I like it. But
Yeah,
the reality is, I'm worried about our defense. Right?
yeah,
They
you need more big bodies in there.
That's
Need more
right.
big bodies.
We what showed up was two things, right? With the Super Bowl. One, why was he giving the ball back to to the guy that I think is the best quarterback in the whole freaking league, right? Both leagues, right? Why was he giving the ball back with minutes to spare? That was dumb, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
that was really dumb, and they put it in a position where everything rode on our defense. And what they had almost 3 minutes left or something. I
yeah.
said, "Oh man,
Too much
you
time.
know,
Too much time.
what,
You see Mahomes come back too much. All right, look.
all right,
Let's yeah.
yeah,
All right,
Mahomes, yeah." So we
so
got to work on that defense.
yeah. All right, Dan.
Young is gone. I mean, he wasn't worth what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
But anyway,
So, all right. So, Dan, thank you very much for your insight on the campus.
well, thanks for having me, and good luck with the show.
Yeah.
I hope to see it myself.
Yeah, I'll try to
Uh,
bring it to San Francisco probably September. I got to find a venue. If I find a venue, all the dates line up. We get 50 people in a room, in a dark room, 100 people in a dark room.
yeah, yeah,
Could be,
I like small theater stuff. I really enjoyed the Marsh when you appeared there.
yeah. It
It
could
was
be the
cool.
Martian, could be someplace else. But all right. Dan Gonzalez, College of Ethnic
Yeah, I
Studies,
don't know about this quasi-military thing, but
Professor
that's
Emeritus.
cool.
Good
That's
seeing you
cool.
again.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on, and as usual, it was a great conversation. We got a substantial amount of depth there on the Gaza stuff.
Again, I'm repeating it all weekend. Repeating it all weekend. All right.
All right, dude.
All right, Dan. All right, take
Thanks.
care. There he goes. Dan Gonzalez, my friend, College of Ethnic Studies, Professor Emerita, Asian American Studies, San Francisco State University. Always good to talk to him about, legal stuff. He's a JD. He knows that stuff. So I have to talk about Ishmael Reed's the video of his play. Playwright, novelist Ishmael Reed, director Carla Blank. They're going to be there with me at the Oakland Arts or the Oakland African American Museum and Library. And that's on 659 14th Street. The Oakland African American Museum and Library. 2:30 tomorrow. Saturday, 2:30 to 4:30. You get an hour of the video version. It's the West Coast video premiere of the Shine Challenge 2024. And then we'll have a little conversation with me and Ishmael and Carla talking about what the Shine Challenge is about. Because as I said initially, or early on in the show, previous shows, the Shine Challenge is a bit of oral history. It's an oral tradition passed on in the Black community, African American community. The year the Titanic sank, it was the story about a guy named Shine. Was that a sort of a moniker indicating shoe shine, black shine? I mean, we're talking about the 20s, right? The thinking, how African Americans review and how African Americans viewed the Titanic. They viewed it as white supremacy. And the sinking of the Titanic had to be seen as kind of especially if there was a black survivor. So one storyteller began the tale. It went through the community. These things were called toasts. Langston Hughes found or heard one, put it into print, and it's part of African American lore. See what Ishmael Reed did with it on the Shine Challenge 2024 West Coast video premiere 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. It's at the Oakland African American Museum tomorrow, the 27th. And they're asking that you call 510. So you know I know Oakland. If I say 510, not 510, 510. 510 637 0200. 510 637 0200. Tell them you're coming. 2:30 at 659 14th Street, the African American Museum and Library in Oakland. I'll be there. Ishmael Reed will be there. Check out the Shine Challenge 2024. Carla Blank, the director, will be there. Once again, we did a Zoom production on video that was a virtual reading. It premiered about a month or so ago at the New Eurekan Cafe in New York. And now it's coming West Coast premiere at the African American Museum and Library in Oakland, 659 14th Street. Check it out. Call them at 510 637 0200 and tell them you want to go. Easy as that. Transition. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being there. We do the show in Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. I guess now that I'm no longer doing the Fringe in New York, I'll be here Pacific time, Monday through Friday, with repeats on the week. We talk about the news. We talk about things. We talk about things that are important to me, to us, the universal things, all things considerable. Check us out on YouTube at Emil Amok 1, on my YouTube channel, on my X feed, formerly known as Twitter, at Emil Amok, on Facebook at Emil Guillermo or Emil Guillermo Media. We're all over. We're all out there. Oh, no, sometimes on my Twitter feed or my Instagram feed. Trying to use Instagram more. Oh, and you know, I don't know. I haven't done TikTok yet, but I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the Chinese. And it's not a TikTok ban. It's just that TikTok should be owned by an American company, not a Chinese company. Anyway, you can go back a few episodes, see what I say about that. All right, I try to close everything with a little meditation. And, you know, it helped me. It helped me so much when I was doing the Fringe. A little loving kindness goes a long way. Metta, M-E-T-T-A, not to be confused with the social network. Helped me a lot. It helped me to perform, helped me to consider all the demons that are coming in my head and releasing them and just getting right so I could perform. Loving kindness. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal.